today the shoulder girdle resections and reconstruction. And I'm Dr. Manish Pruthi. I'm currently working as a orthopedic oncology surgeon at Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Institute and Research Center for last 3 years. And we are a small group now today as we are discussing this. So you can actually pause me in between. We have a lot of time to discuss. It's a small presentation. So, and then we can discuss, or we can, I can elaborate more if there is any confusion in between. Fine. So for any limb salvage surgery, there are two important aspects. First is the resection of the tumor and second is reconstruction. And the aim is to give a patient an optimal function. And by optimal function, we mean the giving the best possible function in the socio-economic situation that we are, or in the clinical situation that we are. It is never the ideal function, or it is never the normal function. We try to give them the best possible function as the tumor dictates or the socio-economic factor dictates. But we never compromise on the resection part. So only thing that changes depending upon the clinical scenario or the socio-economic status is the reconstructions. So as far as the shoulder resections are concerned, the surgical classification system was given by Malavar et al. In 1991. And they actually categorized the shoulder resection into 6 categories. And this was based on the concepts of the surgical margins, the relationship of tumor to anatomical compartments, like whether the tumor is intracompartmental or an extracompartmental, the status of the glenohumeral joint, the magnitude of the individual surgical procedure, like whether it requires the excision of the abductor muscles or not, and precise considerations of the functionally important soft tissue components. So most important here is to understand the current concepts of surgical margins. And I think most of the surgical residents will be knowing about how we decide margins in sarcomas. But for the other people like radiation or the medical oncologists, there is I think you must have read this paper by Kawaguchi et al. This was a very beautiful paper which described how to evaluate the surgical margins in sarcomas. And basically what they did is they actually qualified different types of margins, like whether it's a deep fascia or whether it's a normal muscle covering the tumor, or whether it is a cartilage which is spread, reducing, which is causing a reduction of the tumor spread, or the periosteum or the bone. And then they give a criteria based on the quality of the margin and quantified it according to that. So what they have described is what we call as a barriers. These are the barriers which are the tissues that has any resistance against the tumor invasions, which can include fascia, as I have mentioned, joint capsule, tendon, periosteum, cartilage, pleura, peritoneum, periosteum, and epineurium. So based on this, they divided the barriers into thick barriers and the thin barriers. And so what is a thick barrier? A thick barrier is a physically strong membranous tissue of various thicknesses with a white luster through which underlying tissue cannot be seen. Like suppose when we are operating, we are seeing a barrier and we cannot see what is beyond that barrier. It is called as a thick barrier. So examples of thick barriers are either an iliotibial band or a joint capsule or the periosteum of an infant, which is very thick, or a young child. While a thin barrier is a weaker membranous tissue through which the underlying tissue can be seen. And this is an healthy fascia of individual muscle, the periosteum in adults, vascular sheath, and epineurium. So we should know the concepts of the barriers to actually improve our surgical resection and to better understand why we are choosing a one kind of resection over the other in tumor conditions, especially when the tumor is invading the joint. Suppose the tumor is reaching up to the joint cartilage but has not crossed it. So we know that the cartilage is a 5 centimeter barrier. So even if the tumor has reached up to the joint cartilage, it has not crossed it, we are having a wide margins. But when the tumor invades the cartilage and enters the joint, we know there is a no membranous tissue in between and the joint is contaminated. So based on this, they quantify the thick barrier into a 3 centimeter margin and a thin barrier into a 2 centimeter margin. And if a tumor reaches on one surface of barrier, we have to reduce it by a centimeter. So once we know about the concepts of margins, we'll proceed to the shoulder resections. And I'll be discussing all the shoulder resections one by one. So as I have told you, Malabar has described or categorized this into 6 categories of shoulder resections. So we'll start with the simplest, which is the type 1, which is a simple intra-articular proximal humerus resection. As you can see in the figure on the right, it's a proximal humerus resection where the humerus is resected through the glenohumeral joint. And this was originally described for low-grade sarcomas or metastatic tumors, or for high-grade purely intraosseous tumors. So they say why this was described is in 1990s is because at that time the MRIs were not very advanced, and we know that the biceps tendon is intra-articular. So any high-grade sarcoma can technically go into the joint through the biceps tendon. So that is why for a high-grade sarcoma which had an extra osseous component, intra-articular proximal humerus resection was not recommended. So for high-grade sarcomas with the soft tissue component, we have to do an extra articular, which is removing the glenoid. We'll be discussing it later. But as for purely intraosseous high-grade sarcomas and for low-grade sarcomas or metastatic tumors, we can do a type 1 humerus resection. And in this case, the reconstruction is done either by a prosthesis or a K-nail or a plate spacer. I'll be showing few examples of this. Like this was a patient of a type 1 resection in a 28-year-old male with a low-grade chondrosarcoma. Actually, he had an Olier's disease, and all of us know what is an Olier's disease. It is multiple enchondromatosis, where one of the tumor can convert into a sarcoma. He had an increase in the proximal humerus swelling. We can see the follow-up radiograph. This was in April 13. This was in June 15. And this was in April 18. There was a visible increase in the swelling over 4-5 years. He had enchondromatosis at other sites. So he was a classical case of Olier's disease. This was the MRI finding. We can see a large swelling arising from the proximal humerus posteriorly. We did a biopsy and it was showing a low-grade chondrosarcoma, which is a grade 1 chondrosarcoma. So this is how the resection was planned. This is a classical utilitarian incision, which is not very clear here because of the deformity. But for me to explain to you guys what is a utilitarian incision for proximal humerus resection, it starts from the coracoid process. It goes through the deltopectoral groove, and then it goes anteriorly along the anterior arm up to the elbow. When this is the specimen after a proximal humerus resection, and this is what you can see. A K-nail, a simple K-nail was inserted into the humeral canal, and a normal surgical proline mesh was used, which was sutured around the glenoid labrum and then was sutured back in the nail. So this is how that we reconstruct a proximal humerus resection, and the wound closure was done. And this is the patient's function at around 14th post-op day. We can start elbow mobilization as early as 14th day. Another example where now instead of a K-nail, we used a proximal humerus prosthesis. So this prosthesis was inserted into the remaining bone. Similarly, a proline mesh was sutured along the glenoid. You can see in the figure in the middle. And then this mesh was sutured around the proximal humerus prosthesis and sutured with the non-absorbable sutures. So this is the function that we can get after a proximal humerus resection, because when we are resecting a proximal humerus intra-articularly, we are losing part of deltoid, we are losing rotator cuff, we are losing pectoralis major, latissimus dorsi, teres major insertions. We are losing long head of biceps, part of brachialis and triceps origin. Plus, we are losing the axillary nerve in most of these scenarios. So when we are losing the axillary nerve, so this is the best function that you can get. Sorry, am I audible? Yeah.
You are audible, sir.
So this is the function that we can get, which is an elbow or a hand function, but only a stable shoulder. we are not getting much of the shoulder functions. But if you are able to save the axillary nerve in sometimes a pure intraosseous tumors, and you can put this kind of a reverse shoulder prosthesis, then in an intra-articular resection you can get a function like this, because we are losing a rotator cuff, so you have to put a reverse shoulder prosthesis in which we make a socket now in the humerus and we make a ball in the glenoid, and then patient can get a good function in the shoulder in an intra-articular resection when you can save the axillary nerve. In most of the intra-articular resections of proximal humerus for high-grade sarcomas, we are not able to save the axillary nerve. So coming to the important concluding points about the type 1 resection, incision is a utilitarian arm incision. Reconstruction is done by a spacer, which can be a canal spacer or a prosthesis. We suture this to the remaining scapula with a mesh or a Gore-Tex tube. The functional function is a stable shoulder with a normal elbow and a hand function. And rehabilitation in this scenario is immobilization for 6 weeks in an arm sling so that the mesh and the soft tissues and get strengthened and get some more fibrosis so that the shoulder becomes stable. So this is for type 1 resections. We can take the questions now, and we can take the questions at the end if you have any confusions. Going to the type 2 resection. Type 2 resection is a partial scapulectomy which is not involving the joint. As you can see in the shaded area, we are not removing the glenohumeral joint. It is done in the lesions which is localized to the medial half to the third of a scapula. And all the resections are classified based on how much abductors we remove to A and B, in which A's abductors are retained and B's abductors are resected. So this is an example of type 2 resection, which is in a low-grade chondrosarcoma in a 24-year-old male. You can see in the figure on the left, a large tumor arising from the medial border of scapula. These are the MRI images. And we just removed that tumor with a partial medial half of the scapular spine, the superior scapular spine. And this is, the patient gets a normal function because the glenoid and the most of the scapula is retained. But sometimes the tumors are little bigger, and this is actually not a classical type 2, it's a grade 2 chondrosarcoma involving almost the full body of the scapula. But yes, the glenoid, as we can see in the CT image, the glenoid was free. So in this case, the glenoid with the part of coracoid was saved, but we remained extra articular. We did not enter into the joint, and we kept the glenohumeral joint intact. So this is also a part of a type 2 resection, but the full abductors the patient's lost because of the origin from the scapula, and the patient got a very limited function here. So to understand in the type 2 resection, the incision, it is the oblique scapular incision. We remove the scapula by using an oblique incision which starts from the angle of acromion, goes across the body of the scapula to the inferior angle of scapula. The scapular incision is never straight, it is an oblique incision, so that is why our biopsies should fall into that line, which is from angle of acromion to the inferior angle of scapula. The reconstruction, because we are not losing the joint, only a local muscle flap shifting the rhomboids is more than enough. Function is patient can get even a normal function or sometimes a weak shoulder depending upon the abductor resection, but get a normal elbow and hand functions. Rehabilitation is just a small immobilization for 3 to 4 weeks depending upon the amount of muscle resection in an arm sling. Because the soft tissue heals very fast and we are not removing much of bone, so these patients are mobilized earlier. Going to the type 3 resection. Type 3 resection is an intra-articular scapulectomy. It is like the type 1, which is intra-articular proximal humerus. Type 3 is an intra-articular scapulectomy. This is done for scapular tumors not involving the glenohumeral joint or for soft tissue sarcomas which are invading the scapula. So as far as the function is concerned for type 3 resection, functionally they are similar to type 1 because patient loses the shoulder function but gets a good elbow and hand function or a normal elbow and hand function. So the incision is same, it's an oblique scapular incision. Reconstruction is done by suspending the humerus to the clavicle using the mesh, or sometimes we can put a scapular prosthesis for a total scapulectomy, or sometimes even we can do an ECRT, which is an extracorporeal radiation of the scapula, and put the scapula back, and then use mesh or muscle flaps to cover the scapula and join it with the humerus. Function, it usually gives you a stable shoulder, that is our aim, and get a good normal elbow and a hand function. And rehabilitation here is also same as type 1 resection, which is immobilization for 6 weeks in an arm sling. Going to the type 4 resection, and this usually comes as a short note also, it is called as a Tikoff-Lindbergh procedure. This is a scapulectomy with an extra articular proximal humerus resection. This encompasses an excision of scapula, lateral third of clavicle, the glenohumeral joint, and the proximal humerus. So these are resected en bloc, and this is indicated for malignant scapular tumors involving the scapular neck or the glenohumeral joint. So going to the what is Tikoff-Lindbergh procedure, when was it described, is actually it was initially described in the Russian literature as an interscapulothoracic resection or triple bone resection by Baumann et al. But then the Tikoff was the one who popularized it and did 3 cases, and Lindbergh actually published the first series in a Western literature or in the English literature. So that is why it is called as Tikoff-Lindbergh procedure. It encompasses removal of scapula, head of humerus, outer 1/3 of outer 1/3 of clavicle, and the surrounding soft tissues for a sarcoma of the scapula. After the 1980s, osteosarcoma and Ewing sarcoma of proximal humerus also became the most common treated with Tikoff-Lindbergh procedure, but these are all modification of Tikoff-Lindbergh. The classical Tikoff-Lindbergh includes a full scapular resection and an extra articular proximal humerus resection. When we are doing it for a proximal humerus sarcoma and doing an extra articular partial scapulectomy, that is only a modified Tikoff-Lindbergh, that is not a classical Tikoff-Lindbergh resection. So I'll just show you an example of how the Tikoff-Lindbergh is done. This was a 14-year-old female having an Ewing sarcoma. As you can see, a large sarcoma arising from the scapula, and you can see a skip in the humerus head. So this we call as a contiguous metastasis. This will not take it as a skeletal metastasis, because this is usually in the bone which is in having the same lymphatic drainage. So we take it as a contiguous metastasis or a skip metastasis. And in this case, we planned a Tikoff-Lindbergh, which is a scapulectomy complete with a proximal humerus resection. You can see an anterior incision, which is a straight incision from the acromion, and posterior incision was also a little straight because of the biopsy site. Ideally, the biopsy site should be little more medial, as in this case it was little more lateral. That is why our incision posteriorly was straight. So this is the intraoperative pictures. We can see in the first picture on the left, a scapula and now the Homan retractors were placed around the humeral neck. And after cutting the humerus extra-articularly, you can see that the soft tissues in between are intact, and the complete scapular with the proximal humerus resection was done. And the reconstruction was done by putting some spacer in the humerus. So we have almost the normal humerus in distal 2/3. So we put a K-nail there and sutured it to the remaining clavicle and fixed the K-nail in the humeral canal with a bone cement. So going to the Tikoff-Lindbergh conclusions, in type 4 resections, the incision is oblique scapular incision with a utilarian arm incision. The reconstruction is done by suspending humerus prosthesis or nail to the remaining clavicle using a Prolene mesh or a Gore-Tex tube. Because we are removing, losing part of humerus, we have to reconstruct that humerus with either putting a prosthesis or a K-nail and then suture it to a remaining clavicle. Functionally, it also gives a stable shoulder, sometimes gives a normal elbow function, but sometimes it might give you a weak elbow depending upon the level of humeral resection. The hand function is usually normal. And rehabilitation is same. We need to immobilize for 6 weeks in an arm sling. Going to the type 5 resections, this is the reverse of Tickhoff-Lindbergh, also called as a modified Tickhoff-Lindbergh, in which we remove the proximal humerus extra-articularly with the scapular neck, as you can see in the shaded area, sometimes removing the clavicle also along with it. This is the most common procedure performed for high-grade sarcomas of proximal humerus, as I have said earlier, because of the biceps tendon which goes intra-articularly. We are always worried about an intra-articular contamination through the biceps tendon. That is why we always should go do an extra-articular resection. This can also be done for a large benign tumors of proximal humerus, which are going all around the glenoid, or with or without joint involvement. So this is an example of a 15-year-old male patient with an osteosarcoma of proximal humerus. You can see in the X-ray there was a medial cortical break. There's a large soft tissue component around the scapular, around the glenoid, as you can see in the MRI film. Actually, the soft tissue was covering glenoid from all the sides. So there is no way that you can do an intra-articular resection. Plus, because of the biceps tendon going, the contamination risk is high. So in these cases, it is best to do an extra-articular resection. So this is a classical utilitarian incision as I was talking. The incision starts from the coracoid process marked in a round circle in the top. Then it goes obliquely around the deltopectoral groove and then straight down the arm. The biopsy scar is removed as an island. This is after the resection of the proximal humerus extra-articularly. You can see that the deltoid is completely covering the tumor. And similarly, a K-nail was inserted into the remaining distal humerus, and a proline mesh is used and sutured with a non-absorbable sutures. And this is the patient's clinical picture after once the wound healed. So only problem in putting a K-nail or doing an extra-articular resection with an abductor loss is you get a very thin arm proximally. You can do a muscle transfer, you can do a pectoralis major transfer, but that actually adds to morbidity and does not help much in the function. So we usually don't add any flaps when we are doing a proximal humerus resection, even if we are doing an extra-articular resection, because the wound usually heals without much issues. This is another example in a 30-year-old male, a recurrent giant cell tumor. As you can see the MRI images, the tumor is covering all along the glenoid and entering the joint. So in this case also an extra-articular proximal humerus resection was performed. You can see in the X-ray the glenoid is gone and a K-nail spacer was used, and similarly the K-nail was sutured using a proline mesh to the scapula and the part of the clavicle. So for type 5 resections, the incision is a utilitarian arm incision. We are usually able to finish the resection in the arm incision only. Reconstruction is by a spacer using a K-nail or a prosthesis. We have to use a mesh or a Gore-Tex tube to hang the prosthesis to clavicle. Function is same like a stable shoulder with a normal elbow and hand function. And rehabilitation is also same as type 1, which is immobilization in a sling for 6 weeks. Going to the type 6 resections, actually it is a very rarely done, it is a proximal humerus with a total scapulectomy. I have not done a type 6 resections till now in my life. It was used to be done earlier when the tumors used to present late with a very big extension into the scapula, but now we are able to pick the tumors early. So I have never done a type 6 resection, but yes, it can be done if the tumor is involving more than 2/3 medial to or lateral 2/3 of the scapula. The incision will be similar to the Tickhoff-Lindbergh. It is an oblique scapular with a utilitarian arm incision. Reconstruction is we have to put a prosthesis or a K-nail in the remaining humerus and suspend it to the remaining clavicle using a proline mesh. It will give us a stable shoulder, but because when we are losing most of the humerus, so we'll get some weak elbow function, but we can get normal hand function. And rehabilitation will be a little longer. We need to immobilize these patients for 6 to 8 weeks in an arm sling. I think that is all for shoulder resections. So if there are questions, then I can take now.
Thank you, sir. It was very nicely explained. If there are any questions, please unmute yourselves and ask the questions.
So I think everything is very clear.
Yes, sir, you explained it very nicely. So we are really thankful to you, sir, that
Yeah.
you have given your precious time to educate us all.
Yeah, you're welcome. So we can discuss the rest of the, because I was little confused, like